Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, members of council. We're not starting off very well, are we?
Just like the Broncos.
Good evening, members of council, ladies and gentlemen, staff. I see that we have quorum, and I call this regular meeting for the town of Pelham for Monday, February 3rd, 2014 to order. Before we begin our agenda, I would ask that we take a short time of quiet reflection to remember Libby Gerard, Bruce Gerard's wife, who passed away last week, and the funeral was held on Friday morning. Bruce, as council will recall, is a long-serving member of staff and was recognized here in the fall for serving at the town for 25 years. So if we would just take a moment of quiet reflection for Libby Gerard. And our thoughts and prayers are with Bruce and his family at this time. I would ask Councillor Kersey to lead us in the invocation, followed by the singing of the national anthem, led by Councillor Papp, and I would ask all to rise.
I'd like to read as our prayer this evening a poem that was read at Libby's funeral. I think it speaks to the way we should all live our lives. It's called The Dash. I read of a man who stood to speak at the funeral of a friend. He referred to the dates on the tombstone from beginning to the end. He noted that first came the date of birth and spoke the following date with tears. But he said what mattered most of all was the dash between those years. For that dash represents all the time that they spent alive on earth. And now only those who love them know what that little line is worth. For it matters not how much we own, the cars, the house, the cash. What matters is how we live and love and how we spend our dash. So think about this long and hard. Are there things you'd like to change? For you never know how much time is left that can still be rearranged. If we could just slow down enough to consider what's true and real and always try to understand the way other people feel. And be less quick to anger and show appreciation more, and love the people in our lives like we've never loved before. If we treat each other with respect and more often wear a smile, remembering that this special dash might only last a little while. So when your eulogy is being read with your life's actions to rehash, would you be proud of the things they say about how you spent your dash? May we apply these teachings to our deliberations this evening. Amen.
Amen. O Canada, our home and native land, true patron all, in all thy songs command. With glowing hearts we see thee rise, the true north, strong and free. From far and wide, O Canada, we stand on guard for thee. God keep our land glorious and free. O Canada, we stand on guard for thee. O Canada, we stand on guard for thee.
Thank you very much, Councillor Kersey, and thank you, Councillor Papp, and thank you all. It has been moved by Councillor Lane, seconded by Councillor Papp, that the agenda for the February 3rd, 2014 regular meeting of council be adopted. Are there any changes to the agenda? Councillor Durling?
Not a change, Mr. Mayor, but I do have some business arising from the from minutes that will be presented later. So business arising from the minutes is what I would like to address and have a discussion over.
Business arising from minutes, and that will go when we adopt the minutes after business arising. Thank you.
Yeah, number
Is there
nine.
a seconder for that motion? Councillor Lane? All those in favor? Any opposed? That motion's carried. And is there another, the clerk is informing me that there's another issue regarding a bylaw regarding the, is that it, drainage superintendent? Does someone have that, or?
Members
Would
of
you
council were circulated with that on Friday,
Okay. So,
so we just need an amendment to add it to the agenda.
okay, is there an amendment to add that to the agenda? Moved by Councillor Papp, seconded by Councillor Kersey. All those in favor? Any opposed? That motion is carried. Any other changes to the agenda? There being none, I call the question on the amended agenda. All those in favor? Any opposed? That motion is carried. The next item is disclosure of pecuniary interest. That is any conflicts of interest. Do any members have any conflicts they need to declare at this time? Can that be so noted? That no members have any conflicts at this time. Thank you very much. Now we move to presentations and delegations. And the first is by David Alexander, the Executive Director of the Niagara Workforce Planning Board, regarding Pelham's employment trends. Thank you very much for joining us this evening, Mr. Alexander.
Thank you very much, Your Worship. It's a pleasure to join you tonight. The Niagara Workforce Planning Board has been around for 17 years, and we provide labor market information, data, research, et cetera, to a whole number of stakeholders in the Niagara community. We focus on labor market related issues, but we also have to be conscious of a number of other issues such as demographics. I'm going to provide you with a presentation tonight. It's very high level. I'm going to skim through a number of these slides. These are for your consideration as you move towards your economic development plan, but it also will impact on some of the issues in your deliberations as it affects Pelham locally, but also the Niagara region as a whole. One of the things we're doing this year is a set of guides for the lower tier municipalities, so that we will be able to produce an 8-page guide on your labor market, and we would enjoy working with you and collaboratively so that we could look at putting your logo on that. And we want to make sure that the narrative in that report is reflective of the information you want to convey to employers and the community, as well as it rolls up across Niagara.
Excellent.
So we also are looking at other workforce opportunities as part of the mission that we do. And I'm going to skim through a few data-related issues on the whole, and then look forward to answering your questions. We gather data from a wide variety of sources, and so one is the job numbers, and we can provide more detailed month-over-month job numbers as we use the access to the variety of data sets that we have at our fingertips. So the trend is slightly upwards over the next handful of years according to our economic sources, although we've noticed, you can notice there that there was a slight dip in the early part of the recession. We can also look at the whole host of occupations in Pelham, but here are the top 10. And so on the right side, you see the average hourly wage. And so you see a lot of folks here in Pelham, secondary school teachers, counselors, people who work in the agricultural sector, assisting health services, et cetera, and on down. So you have the volume of occupations as well as as their hourly rate. We can also break down your profile by industry. So food service and drinking places, farms, educational services, nursing and residential care facilities, and motor vehicle and parts dealers are the top 5 industries in Pelham. And you can see that there's the average annual income for these industries on the right side. One of the key things to pay attention to in terms of your economy is the market income. $89.60 out of every $100 of income in Pelham is measured as market income, compared with 87.7 in Ontario. So you're above the provincial average in terms of market income. 12% of your incomes in Pelham are from retirement, pension, superannuation, and annuities, whereas the average in Ontario is 7%. And then also average earnings in 2012 were $35,700, or 77% of the national average. So these are numbers that you can use to benchmark your economy and set some targets. One of the issues with the region is our population, and this is something that we have to contend with as the whole peninsula. So I'm just going to flip through a number of these slides that you have in your handout, and you can see that the baby boomers moving through the population here. This is a projection in 2016. You can see, like David Foote, the boom, bust, and echo. So they see the baby boom, and you can see their echo of their children there. One of the things that you would want to notice is that we lack workers in those middle years. So if we're going to attract people to live in Niagara, it's going to be at those earning years between 25 to 45 years old. And as you can also see, in the future, the population tapering at the bottom. So that's got to be a concern about looking at planning for our institutions and other activities. And you compare Niagara to Ontario, one of the things that we've noticed is that Niagara needs to attract that younger cohort to work here, but also to look at how we can retain people to stay here in Niagara after they've completed post-secondary education. We also notice over time the decline, or the growth rather, of the older workers in the population. The green there is the growth of older workers in our working age population. And youth is relatively steady in terms of participation in our workforce. We also hear about the unemployment rate, but it's also the participation rate that we should be concerned about in being able to target individuals to stay in the economy, because we do notice that there are a lot of people in Niagara who have stopped looking for work, given the nature of where we are in the economic cycle. But again, we want to see an increase in labor market participation as we grow our economy. Here you can see Niagara's population, and a few years ago it dipped into the negative area. And when you overlay other regions in Ontario, this has to be a concern as we look at our own economic plans and cooperate with others in the development of our initiatives. So we can set great targets and initiatives, but population needs to be an underlying factor in being able to grow our economy. One of the things in terms of economic terms, academic terms, is the stagnation of our economy. So we don't see population growth, so therefore we don't see a change in the participation and labor force in terms of growth. And so, in terms of secular stagnation, this is an issue that it's kind of a trap that some economies get themselves into, where in looking to break out of it, you need the resources to actually chart that significant direction. Population and participation is a key factor in holding us to this. A couple of components of the labor market. We have comparing full-time to part-time workers. The balance of the part-time labor force is made up by women, although that number is changing more towards a balance, as well as full-time participation about men is falling in the workforce. So more women are working full-time in the workforce. We also know that because we're improving childcare, but we still need to continue to improve childcare options, because when you look at reasons for not seeking work in Ontario, females decidedly over males, with 5-to-1 ratio, look at personal family responsibilities as a major barrier to participate in the workforce. This is just general observations that I've just made. And then just a few more slides, because I'll cover the rest of the presentation with a bit of a narrative. Key thing for us here in Niagara and also a little more locally in Pelham, working with your schools, is that this is Ontario's labor force education, 10% people less than grade 12, 27% with only grade 12, and Niagara's version is this, 11% grade 12 and 32% with only grade 12. This is a real concern, and literacy is a major factor in ensuring that we have a healthy and dynamic workforce. As we know, we're aging more rapidly than the rest of the regions in the province, and so we have to focus not just on trying to get people to move and stay here, but do better in terms of the kinds of people that our schools are producing and their education rates. There's a chart on education level. Hopefully we'll be able to contemplate some of these slides later. Unemployment by age, unemployment rate in Niagara. Not as significant as the early 90s recession, but again, we can chart these kinds of numbers again and set some targets. We also can note where the seasonal issues are in Niagara in terms of unemployment, and also some of the seasonal industries. One of the things that we will need to do is look at how we can prevent against the seasonality of some of the work that goes on. And as I've shown you that agriculture is a significant employer in your community, how do we make sure that you work with those companies, farms, to so that they have 12-month of the year activities? And we can learn from other regions of some of their strategies. A couple of slides about some poverty-related issues, because this is also a concern and a conversation about the health of our local economy. This is a spot the recession slide where you look at EI beneficiaries. So we've seen a spike in beneficiaries on EI, but that's fallen back down to almost pre-recession levels. So but it does show that we're agonizingly coming out of this recession as we continue to grow our local economy. When you compare Niagara to the rest of the country and the rest of the province, we see that in the early ages, right now you're looking at Gen Y and Gen X. How do we work with these different generations in the workforce to create the kind of communities that they want to live in, as well as the kinds of occupations that they have been trained for and would like to be employed in? Mr. Mayor, I'd like to leave the presentation at that point because, again, I'm throwing a lot of information at you, and I know that you've got a strategic planning session coming up on Wednesday. We'd be happy to come back and workshop some more of this information, more detailed information. We'd be happy to field information requests so we can go away, do the research, come up with the numbers and the data, and you can plug those into your projections and identify some targets economically. So we'd be a very willing partner in that. And then on Wednesday, we'd like to forward you a draft of the brief for Pelham so that you'd be able to review that and begin to engage you in a partnership on creating the narrative that you want to see appear in that document.
Thank you very much, Mr. Alexander. Certainly, we appreciate your willingness to work with us, and you've shown that since we started the discussion about economic development in Pelham and what that could look like, what should it look like, and we appreciate that. We appreciate this update as well. Lots of information here, and certainly, especially in the beginning where it's Pelham-centric, I'll say, and Pelham-focused. So thank you very much for that. And as well, maybe if you could present that to us for Wednesday, just a little bit of a draft that we could look at and get back to you on. I wonder if members of council have any questions for you at this time. We'll entertain questions. I see Councillor Rybak first. Councillor Rybak.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and thank you. Excellent presentation. Loved it. Just want some clarification with respect to a couple of slides, the ones dealing with Pelham. Job numbers in Pelham, top 10 occupations in Pelham. Do I understand that slide to mean that those jobs exist within Pelham, or those are jobs that people who live in Pelham have and go to, even though they're not located in Pelham?
The occupations are from tax filer data, so that means that those are people that live in Pelham and the kinds of work that they do. And the industries are the companies that are here and the employers that are here.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just so for clarification, the job numbers are based on StatsCan, so that's people working anywhere within the region but living here.
Yes.
But the top 10 occupations are occupations that are actually resident in Pelham. Again, for clarification, so when we talk about secondary school teachers, there are over 200 teaching jobs in Pelham? Mm-hmm. That's a surprise. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Others, questions? Okay, we look forward to working with you on that. Thank you very much. Councillor Papp, did you have a question? I thought you...
No, just a comment on this. I've seen this before, and I think it's so appropriate that David came, because here we are getting ready to develop our economic plan, and this information is vital. Plus, we're also looking at all the probable construction and et cetera down in East Font Hill, and that determine what type of industry. I mean, and it's vital to us to understand how this is critical in our planning. So thanks again for bringing this to us.
Thank you, Councillor. Mr. Alexander?
And this information can be used best by employers being able to look at incorporating some of this data into their financial projections so that it helps create realistic business plans. And one of the tools that we're going to be rolling out starting in January is something called Employer One, where that's going to be a Niagara-wide demand-side survey. We'll be able to look at occupational issues sector by sector and be able to inform our schools the kind of workers that our local employers will need. There's going to be a number of other initiatives that will be rolling out over the next 12 months, including a focus on the agri-biotech sector, because Niagara is very strong in the agricultural sector, and how do we enhance the development of careers, training opportunities, business starts in that particular area. And when you're talking about being able to look at plant genomics, and there's this whole issue of Carbohydrate Valley, the idea of using our natural assets and the infrastructure in Niagara to develop chemistry around the agribusiness sector. It's pretty exciting in terms of that being a cluster, a sector of companies.
Very good. Thank you very much. And so I do have a motion moved by Councillor Kersey, seconded by Councillor Lane, that the information submitted by the delegation, David Alexander, Executive Director of the Niagara Workforce Planning Board, regarding Pelham employment trends and Niagara trends be received. And the clerk has indicated to me that there are other participants in our economic development discussion that will be happening on Wednesday, and we'll send this information out to those other participants, and it can be very, very helpful in that discussion that we're having. So thank you very much for this, and I'm going to call the question on the motion. All those in favor? Any opposed? That motion is carried. We look forward to continuing to work with you and appreciate your presentation and your work thus far. Thanks very much. Next, we have our regional councillor. Regional Councillor Beatty is here. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, members of council and staff. The report before you is from the first cycle of council at the beginning of 2014, and we've already had, as you can see here in the report, the regional council meeting that ratified those decisions. Just two things to note from my point of view. One is a very clear, quickly out of the box with regard to capital items on the purchases for the year. That's been a pattern for the last number of years to get our budget finished, completed well into December, so that we're ready to go with the tenders to get the best prices possible at the beginning of the year. So a lot of money being expended early to kickstart the economy and to get the best value for the dollar. The second thing I want to mention with regard to the report that's here, because it's ongoing, you've seen it in the press, is the somewhat surprised about the costing for the Burgoyne bridge replacement. We're caught in a bit of a dilemma, because there are federal and provincial tax dollars that are co-funding this, but they have timeline sensitivity. At the same time, in particular, I think it's the geotechnical issues are coming in far more costly than was anticipated before the tenders were actually let. So there's been a number of deferrals at the Public Works meeting to try and get the budget down to a more reasonable number, but also to have this work started as soon as possible to get the federal and provincial grants underway. Those are the only two items with regard to my comment. The other is, I guess, more with regard to the media commentary about referendum. There were two questions that, if you've read my article, two questions that were put out of about 7 or 8 on the laundry list. One of them was found out by the clerk not to be valid because we, as a single municipal chair, government can advocate for the closing down of the local, another municipality or others, et cetera. It could have come from the Minister of Municipal Affairs, et cetera. The decision was fought by a vote to not ask for that. My own commentary is I would doubt that a minister at this point in time, knowing what the history was of amalgamations that were forced in the past, prior to a provincial election, probably would not want to put such an item on the ballot. So that one is off. There is a councillor who asked for reconsideration of the one regarding municipal transit. However, the clock is ticking. We will have a public meeting on Thursday, this Thursday, Regional Council meeting, to invite the public input with regard to the exact wording of that question on transit. However, it may still be up in the air depending upon the reconsideration being asked for by another councillor. So the only issues in terms of this report, the other one is sort of outside the report. It deals with the media. And the fact is you probably have observed, again, some very significant restructuring going on at the region. We now have almost a term of council seeing a rededication in terms of all of the senior management, most recently the CAO. We've seen at this point in time in terms of the promotion of the senior planner to an acting commissioner of planning. We did do something that was somewhat unorthodox, and that was it's customary to do a posting for a senior position, and in most circumstances, council would want that to occur. However, we had a sudden departure of the Director of Economic Development, and my feeling, supported by many others in council, is that seeing numbers that show Ontario as the highest, or Niagara as the highest unemployment rate, to wait 6 months to go through a screening process with headhunter and so on is not going to be in Niagara's best interest. So we took the recommendation of the CEO and made a direct hiring of a director. I was at an agriculture meeting last week where that gentleman was present, and I'll tell you, the credibility that he has already got within the agriculture community is significant. I received an email today from the economic development officers who are applauding this decision, because the gentleman seemed to be very much a team leader. It's not going to be a top-down management style. It's going to be a collaborative one. I think Niagara will be able to proceed faster. And looking at our economy, interesting following on David Alexander's presentation, it's what we need to have for the people that live here now and for the people who ought to be able to live here following their high school and college, university graduation. So that's my report with that little extension for things that have been in the news. Any other questions for council? Be glad to answer.
Thank you very much for your presentation. Councillor, do members of council have any questions for Councillor Beatty? No. Councillor Powell.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, through you. Councillor Beatty, thank you for the report. Just two quick items, if you don't mind. You don't have to. I'd be very interested in looking at the Public Health Customer Service Charter, see what that is. I'm curious about that, because there's, and also I read about this Western Golden Horseshoe Municipal Network Charter. I'm curious on what's that all about.
First one, I give an immediate answer, and the mayor may be able to do more on the second one. What public health has done basically is it looked with its various staff and divisions in terms of what has been your responsiveness. Like how many times does the phone ring? You know, how long does it take from the time you get an email to you make a response, et cetera? And said, look, you need to be conscious of this in terms of those are metrics that we can get a handle on. We need to see what they are, and that's the stage we're at right now, defining what they are, and then setting targets for improved customer service. Bottom line, our CEO is extremely pleased with his observation of our public health as well as social services department in that regard. But we, at this one time, since we don't have the metrics on it, it's the anecdotal comment in terms of people feel good about their treatment at the various clinics and so on. They feel good about the visit of the school nurse or the home nurse, et cetera. But this is going to put some actual quantitative data down for it. And you want to go on the second one? I would have to get some further information on the second.
Yeah, and I think the clerk can assist with that, Madam Clerk.
Yes, just the introductory letter was listed on this evening's agenda of the that Golden Horseshoe report, but I'll be pleased to send the full report to you.
Thank you. And then the reason I asked that is that we're working on improving customer service and doing the metrics, and it's fascinating to see, especially when it out in the public health sector, because usually it's anecdotal things like what exactly, how many people did they see in the clinics, how many people had issues with it, and that becomes quite critical, particularly when we're dealing with all kinds of many complex issues affecting public health. So I'm very pleased to hear that.
An increase in the ability or the desire of the regional staff and communication to try and engage. Like we had a significant public engagement prior to budget setting in terms of what people valued and where they thought the priorities should be, and we put out to them the concept in terms of you can you see living within sort of an inflation sort of aspect, where we can see the money being spent, where we can say it's too much, we should cut back and so on. And I think you can only benefit by that kind of public engagement.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Okay, thank you.
Okay, thank you very much, Councillor. Any other questions for Councillor Beatty at this time? Thank you very much, Councillor. We look forward to seeing you on Thursday at the region. Thanks for your update. So it has been moved by Councillor Lane, seconded by Councillor Papp, that the January 16th, 2014 regional report submitted by Regional Councillor Beatty be received for information, and we look forward to his report at our next meeting regarding the next cycle of regional council.
Mr. Mayor, because you and I have talked about this, could you ask your council, we had talked about, because there are occasions now with the reporting, I get the blue book on a Friday, and you're requesting a report on the Wednesday prior to, which is fine, okay, in terms of doing that. But there are now going to be occasions where I will not have a report because we're into the middle of the cycle. I proposed to the mayor, and for your consideration, if on occasion there's special topics, for example, it was mentioned by your mayor at the last meeting about study tours for the FCM conference. Update on that. There's significant reorganization going on at the Conservation Authority. There's things that happen on occasion with the Escarpment Commission that pertain to Pelham. And I'd like, at some point in time, Mr. Mayor, your council's opinion as to whether or not you would entertain, and I would confine it to the 10-minute presentation style.
So thank you. If council's amenable to those issues, especially as FCM approaches and we're hosting, I thought that would be certainly appropriate in some of the other changes that are going on. Certainly Councillor Beatty wears many hats, including the Niagara Escarpment Commission and the Conservation Authority. So if council's okay with that, we can look forward to those updates. Thank you for asking.
Okay. And if you've got a very busy meeting, ask me to come back again, I'll be fine.
Okay, thank you very much, Councillor. I'm going to call the question then. All those in favor? Any opposed? That motion is carried, and we look forward to those updates. Thank you. The next item has been moved by Councillor Kersey, second by Councillor Papp, that the following minutes be adopted as printed, circulated, and read. And those minutes are for the regular meeting of council of January 20th. And the next is for the special meeting of council on December 9th and continued on January 23rd. That was that special meeting that was held together jointly with the library board, and then also on the 23rd with members of the Friends of the Library. Any discussion, errors, or omissions regarding those minutes? There being none, I call the question. All those in favor? Any opposed? That motion is carried. Councillor Durley, you did add something regarding business arising from the council minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and it's regarding item 8.2, which is the special meeting of council, where the original meeting was with council and members of the library board. The second, or the continuation of that meeting, we had a larger group of participants, which is great because we're getting a lot more information. However, I do have some very grave concerns regarding how that meeting actually went, because during the deliberation on December the 9th, we had a list of 31 facts that were up on board. Although they were posted at the continuation meeting, there was absolutely no consideration given to any of them. And we did, from the 91 or 92 that were offered at that continuation meeting, only those were considered when we were boxing to take further action. I would really appreciate if, in fact, the next time we meet, which is going out for information now, if we can start the continuation meeting with consideration given to the original 31 facts that were not discussed, were not highlighted, or were not even looked at during that second meeting, because there are some there that I feel merit boxing. Okay, and certainly they were posted, but nobody even looked at them. And to me, that was wrong, because there was a lot of good information that was there at the meeting that was held here. So I think we would be very remiss if, in fact, we did not give some attention to those, and some serious attention to them. So I would recommend that the next meeting this be highlighted, and at least everybody who is in attendance at that meeting be aware that these are the things that were first there, because a lot of the new participants had no idea whatsoever that the information that was brought up at the first fact-finding meeting. So
thank you, Councillor Durley. I'm going to call on the CAO to comment just about the process and to see if we can include that. I think it's a good idea to include that. And Mr. CAO, in terms of the next meeting, is that something that we can accomplish and add that, given where we are in the process? I think we just finished boxing the main ideas. Can you just comment on that, please?
Yes, Mr. Mayor, certainly, I think the councillor's comments are good, and certainly there's nothing to prevent us from going back and including those. We are at a point where we had concluded the fact-finding. However, to include the original facts and have those looked at is not an issue. It won't interrupt the process.
Okay. Thank you very much.
Exactly, I appreciate that, because I feel that once people see those original 31 facts, that they're going to want to box one or several of them as well, because there are some very, very important information, facts that should be included in the mix as we go forward.
Okay, thank you very much, and we'll do that as we move forward and take that as direction at the next meeting, which is, am I announcing this?
No, I just wanted to show.
Oh, so we are populating that and looking at 4 different dates for the meeting, and one appears to have more participants than another. So I think the clerk will be circulating that. And I think at that last meeting, we also said that we wanted to inform the broader community about the meeting. There were some folks that talked to me after saying that they didn't know the meeting was on. But it's extremely important to try to get those participants from that second meeting to be very active and involved in that. And so I think there were 9 members of the Friends of the Maple Acre Library that we want to be involved. This council has said on a number of occasions it's important to have the participants as you move along, and this continuity of participation. So we'll look forward to that date, that we can ensure that, and council will follow up on that. So thank you for raising it. The next item is consent agenda items to be considered in block. And I would ask if there's any members that would like to lift any of the consent agenda items for separate consideration. Councilor Rybak?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Really a question for clarification with respect to item 11.4.5, request for support Niagara Central Airport. A couple of factual changes. Does that require lifting for us to change, or can we just have
You mean
comments?
amending the letter slightly?
Yes, just slightly, just to correct it.
So,
we can handle that with comments.
yeah. I think
Great,
so. Is
terrific,
that all right?
thank you.
Mr. Mayor, I don't believe the issue needs to be lifted. I think it's the endorsement for the
Yeah.
intent. If there's changes, editorial things, we'd be happy to accommodate those.
Perfect.
Okay, thank you. And Councilor Lane, and then Kersey.
Yes, Mr. Mayor, if I might, 11.1, the operating budget, I would like to get that for some discussion.
Okay. Councilor Kersey?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I have a question of procedure, and I have also an item I'd like to lift. The resolution, the MPP resolution regarding joint and severable liability, we've already passed a motion on that. I was going to propose a staff direction that our motion be forwarded to the MPP in question. Is that something that we need to do through a lift, or?
I don't think so.
Okay.
And the clerk is already one step ahead and put that in.
Perfect. I'd like to lift 11.5.1.3, land use planning and appeal system.
Okay. Thank you. Any other items? Okay, so it has been moved by, let's see here, I gotta make sure I get this.
So this one.
Let's see, right? Okay, thank you. So it has been moved by Councillor Papp, and I need a seconder, Councillor Durley, that the following consent agenda items be received and the recommendations contained therein be approved as applicable. Item number 2, minutes of the Committee of the Whole from January 27th, 2014. Number 3, staff reports of a routine nature or information or action. The first is a report regarding restricted acts after nomination day. Then there's items of action correspondence of a routine nature. The first is correspondence from the Royal Canadian Legion Veterans and Troops Recognition ad. And the motion is that the correspondence be received and that the advertisement be approved of a business card size, and that the clerk be directed to advise the Legion. The second is, as Councillor Kersey raised, a letter from Randy Pettipies, MPP, regarding joint and severable liability, and it's certainly that we receive it, and also that the clerk be directed to advise the MPP and forward a copy of the town's September 2011 report and resolution pertaining to this matter. The third item under correspondence is applications to the Communities in Bloom Committee of K. Vermeer and J. Berg, and that we appoint them to the bylaw as listed, and we certainly appreciate and their application and welcome their involvement in Communities in Bloom. The next is from the Zest Restaurant, that the correspondence of January 27th be received and forwarded to staff for investigation and report, and that's regarding a supper market. And there's a fifth item of correspondence, and that is the one that Councillor Ribbiak highlighted. It's a letter of support for the Niagara Central Airport, and that it be forwarded to regarding their airport septic system, and that the mayor be authorized to forward the correspondence to the region. Number 5, in general, there's information correspondence items, several from Niagara Region, including that report, Western Golden Horseshoe Municipal Network Charter, which the clerk will be circulating, Development Charges Act, Ministry of Municipal Affairs and Housing Review, the Smarter Niagara Steering Committee Terms of Reference, proposed expansion of the Humberstone landfill site information, and Niagara Regional Policy Plan Amendment, which is the site-specific amendment, including a few sites in Pelham. And finally, committee minutes for information, and they include the Mayor's Youth Advisory Council from November 26th, the Active Transportation Committee minutes of November 19th, the Summerfest Committee minutes of December 4th, and the Communities in Bloom Committee minutes of November 27th. Councillor Ribbiak, I'll go with you because you raised the item regarding the Central Airport first.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and I do appreciate staff putting together this letter. I think it's going to help a great deal, but I do want to make sure that the letter notes that there are 4 local municipalities supporting the airport, not only 3.
Thank you. That will be changed.
Thank you.
Any other items? Councillor Durley.
Well, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Regarding the letter concerning supper market, it certainly looks like a terrific idea and something that is worth exploring. And I spoke to Ms. Van Ravensway earlier, something connected with her report that comes up at COW. I certainly would like to use this in the debate at that particular time, or the discussion that will follow. Certainly the opportunities are wide-ranging in there, and looking at the success that the Shiverfest, I'll call it, that the cold night under the arches was, and the attention that it drew, if in fact we could look at perhaps looking at this supper market and adding to the market Thursdays and the Banjo Thursdays to host something in the actual under the arches type thing, it would be a great idea, and I certainly will bring it up for discussion at that particular point in time.
Thank you very much.
This is certainly a great initiative that's coming forward, and that turned the light on that there's great possibilities there. Thank you.
Excellent. Thank you very much, Councillor, for raising that, and we look forward to that discussion in committee. Any other items? Sorry, Councillor Papp, I'm sorry.
Just for comment?
Yes.
Okay. At some point, I will be asking someone that both you and I, Mr. Mayor, have talked to with respect to the environment, and I just can't help but have some deep concerns when I see we're once again expanding landfill sites. We're running out of space. There surely has to be some other alternatives on how we dispose of our waste, and there is one company that I will ask that if they could do a presentation to talk to us about this, because it just seems like we're going, and I hate to call it like a cyclical motion. On one hand, we want to convert stuff, yet now we're back to expanding landfill sites, which we were trying to avoid. So I've asked this individual to get in touch with the clerk and do a presentation on an alternative that's actually been taking place and is happening in the Sioux right now as we speak. So it'd be interesting to hear, especially I found it ironic that this was on the agenda. Because the EA will be an interesting session too. People wondering why are we doing this? Well, there's reasons why we're doing it. So I thank you for that. And
Okay, thank you. Just to comment on that, and in terms of the background information, may not be all included on the agenda, but the expansion is actually a vertical expansion as opposed to a non-vertical, a horizontal expansion. So it's looking at adding more height to what's allowed. But you're right, and
Still an
although the
expansion.
region,
You're right.
yes, and the region is doing very well in terms of its diversion. There was a report out last week about that, so, but point well taken. So thank you very much, Councillor. We look forward to that. Anything further? There being none, I call the question. All those in favor? Any opposed? That motion is carried. I believe, Councillor Lane, you were first on item number 1.
No, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Since our last meeting, I've had the opportunity to speak to a number of people, a number of citizens, and the same subject at the end of the day, or the same topic always comes back, and that is taxes, taxes, taxes. And I do recognize that there was a great deal of effort that went into this particular operating budget. There's no denying that. But at the same time, recently, certainly my bill and a number of other people I know, the utilities have gone just lately through the roof. A number of people in Pelham, certainly in the rural area, have been affected. Their employment has been affected. Their livelihoods have been affected. Some of them by the closing of the Fort Erie racetrack and other things. A number of people have had their incomes drastically reduced, either by the fact that they've lost their jobs or had to take less paying jobs, and a number of people are on fixed incomes. At this point in time, I find it difficult to suggest that we need to have a tax increase in the town of Pelham. Year over year, we have a tax increase in Pelham, and it's true that other communities have the same thing. But if we want to be a caring and vibrant community, I think we need to find a way, just one time at least, say to the people, we're going to give you a zero tax increase. I know there's some things that have happened in the town that might allow us to have a reduction in the taxes, and I won't go into details because it's I don't think it's for this time. But I believe that this 1.49% or whatever can be reduced, and I honestly believe that it can be reduced to zero. And I frankly would like to see that happen. And that is, that's my position. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you very much, Councillor. Others to the motion, which is on the floor now, actually to received and the recommendations contained therein be approved as applicable. That is the motion before us. Others to that motion? So are we ready? Thank you, Councillor. Are we ready then for the question? Calling the question on...
Could I have a recorded vote, please?
Okay, thank you. I would ask the clerk to...
Point of order. We have not approved the operating budget, Councillor Lane, so until we...
Just a second, please.
Yeah.
Sorry. You have a point of order, Councillor, in what regard?
Just the whole protocol. If we're voting to what? As a part of your voting against the minutes?
No, I didn't vote against the minutes. I'm voting
Yeah.
against the budget.
Voting
Okay.
against the budget, so that, I need clarification on that.
Okay, so we'll get that clarification.
that
So the
clarified
motion
so
on the
clear-
floor
Yeah.
is that we, and it's been moved by Councillor Papp, second by Councillor Durley, that the recommendations contained in the Committee of the Whole report from January 27th, which was the budget meeting, be received and approved. So that includes all of the decisions in terms of the budget itself, the item for permissive grants, which we still have to deal with, and holding off on those, and as well red circling the library portion of the budget. Well, Councillor Lane has not made an amendment or a change to that. But what Councillor Lane has asked is he has asked for a recorded vote on the approval of that recommendation.
Okay, I'm still struggling with it, but anyhow, we haven't settled, I mean, if there's items that you wish to be taken off the budget, I mean, by doing this, in effect, the budget has been approved.
Maybe I'll ask, I had a
Well,
similar,
I
a similar
wish,
question.
Mr. Mayor, if
Yep.
I could be clear, because
Okay.
I don't, in all respect to Councillor Lane, it's the same token, if we pass the approval of the minutes, then in effect, we've approved that
Sorry.
budget, and we haven't dealt with the library budget yet.
Right, okay, well, we'll ask the
Oh,
clerk to
clerk, help
explain
me
it, and I think
explain
we
it
may
to you.
call on the CAO. Go ahead.
Just in response to that, just to give a little bit of clarification, the first recommendation is that the recommendation sheets coming out of the COW meeting, budget meeting,
Right.
be approved. The minutes are a separate entity. The approval of the minutes, which has taken place, is just to adopt the minutes that they correctly reflect what transpired at the meeting. The reason we put the resolution sheets on as a separate item is that is to allow you to vote separately on those resolutions. The resolution, it's on pages 90 and 91 of your council agenda package. The final resolution was that Committee of the Whole recommend that Council approve the 2014 operating budget and that the permissive grants remain unspent until such time as Council approves the allocation, and that the library budget portion of the operating budget be redlined until such time as the library board hasn't had an opportunity to make the presentation. So that's the motion that Councillor Lane is speaking to now. The budget has not been approved and would be approved if this recommendation is then approved this evening on the motion now.
Okay. Anything further, Councillor? And maybe the question is regarding, is it also regarding the redlining, red circling of the library portion, or not?
If there's adjustments made to the budget that would impact somewhat on whether it's an increase or decrease, I mean, by passing this, we basically saying is save and accept the library budget.
Right.
And notwithstanding what happens with permissive grants, then what was presented last week is basically what we're approving. Is that as simple as I can state it?
I'm going to ask the CEO
Yeah.
to just comment
I don't want to
on that.
confuse it,
Similar
and I
question.
don't
No,
want
it's,
to take away from what, because Councilor Lane was looking at something, we approve it, then that's approved, the budget is done, right?
right.
Mr. Mayor, that's a correct synopsis of, from Councillor Papp with regards
Is
to.
that right?
That's
Okay.
correct, yes.
Okay, I got it.
Okay,
All right,
thank
sorry.
you. Others to the discussion? No? Okay, are we ready for the calling of the question? I'm just going to comment. I think, Councillor Lane spoke about the impact on individuals. He spoke about rising costs, et cetera. I think the budget document that was presented to us last week shows how we have saved money and kept our tax rates extremely low. When we talk to other municipalities, certainly their increases are far, far larger than the increases that we've had here in the town. There was a situation where we did have a tax decrease, and that was in 2011. It was very, very slight. It was 0.1% a decrease, and the last 2 years have been 2.5 and 2.6. Those are blended numbers. With the decrease in the education portion, it appears that the overall increase on the taxes will be sort of in the neighborhood of 1.2, 1.3% overall. One never wants to pay any increase for anything, but what I've heard actually from the community is please ensure that our services continue to be provided. That people are saying to me in the community, it's important to have those services. So please don't cut something in order to just save a few dollars here and there. They enjoy the service that we've received, we're providing in terms of things like the sidewalk snow removal, which is an added service and is in this budget. things like the cultural and recreational events that we're putting on, which is in this budget, and the additions and all of the road work and infrastructure improvements, which is in this budget. So I understand where the councillor's coming, but I will be, you'll see this when we do the vote, but I will be supporting the budget. I think a lot of work has gone into it, and it is a very good budget for us for 2014. Obviously, we still have to do more work in terms of the library, and we look forward to those discussions moving ahead, but I think at this point, this is a good news budget for the town. So those are my comments, and unless others want to make comment, I would ask the clerk to undertake the recorded vote. Thank you.
So the motion is made by Councillor Papp, seconded by Councillor Durley, and that is to receive and approve the recommendations of Committee of the Whole, COW 2 2014 of January 17th. I will call in alphabetical order by surname. Councillor Kersey.
A.
Sorry?
Support.
Yes. It's yay or nay. Councillor Durley.
Yay.
Councillor King. Yay. Councillor Lane.
Yay.
Nay.
Nay.
Thank you. Councillor Papp.
Yay.
Councillor Ribbiak.
Yay.
Mayor Augustine.
Yay, in favor.
6-1, the motion carries.
Thank you very much. The motion has carried, as you've heard. And now moving to the next item, which is the item that was lifted by Councillor Kersey, 11513, which is the Land Use Planning and Appeal System. Comments on consultation document. Councillor Kersey.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I read with interest the consultation document that this report refers to, and the recommendations that were put forward by staff to the Integrated Community Planning Committee. And it speaks to a lot of the things that we've talked about around here, the efficiencies of the system, combining procedures, merging and making various aspects of planning documents work together. You know, we have a fantastic number of documents that planners and developers have to try and comply with, a lot of which actually contradict each other and conflict with each other, and it creates a myriad of confusion out there. So I very much like the comments that were put forward by the Planning Committee, and I assume will be endorsed by Regional Council. And I'd like to make a motion that we would support and endorse the motion that, again, I'm presuming Regional Council will put forward, and that we forward our support to the minister involved.
Okay. So it's to receive and support and endorse those comments, including sending that to the minister. Okay. Thank you very much. I think they were adopted by Regional Council, and that's why they're here on our desk. One of the items was to circulate. So thank you for raising that. Are there any other comments from members of council regarding that? One of the other items, Councillor, that you didn't raise, but I just want to highlight because it's specifically important to Pelham, and that is something that the province has done, and as well developers occasionally do. So in the case of official plans, and our official plan, and the East Vaughan Hill Secondary Plan, the province and Lafarge both appealed that plan writ large, without specific items to which they opposed. And that has become a problem for us. Of course, one's supposed to work with the province through this process, and I put it to you that they didn't with our official plan, and instead of doing the work up front, they just did the work after the fact. And I understand this is unfortunately the situation for many municipalities, and that holds up development. And then the second is when a development group or a company can just appeal the entire plan, and one just scratches their head and says, well, why? And now we have yet to find out what the issues are regarding the official plan officially, and there's that meeting that was approved in October of 2012, and now the meeting's not planned for March 2014. So a lot of time happens and a lot of development doesn't occur, and communities don't move forward in the vision that the community has, and that's why it's important. So I think that's a key element there, and I spoke to that element when this was raised at Planning Committee at the region. So I want to highlight that here.
Thank you
Councillor
for
Goldman.
highlighting that, Mr. Mayor. I neglected to do that. I think that's one of the main points that was put forward by the region. It's certainly impacts on municipalities and yeah, that somebody can hold up the entire plan just for one issue. It's not right.
No. Thank you very much, Councillor. So we do need a seconder for that. Is there a seconder? Councillor Durley. Any other comments? I'm going to call the question on supporting, endorsing, and sending that to the minister. All those in favor? Any opposed? That motion is carried unanimously. Thank you very much. I guess, is my report next here?
So just get you to sign this.
Okay, thank you. Trying to find my report. Sorry about that. I usually have it marked. Do you have it there? Thank you very much. So you see my report here, members of council. There's a number, here it is, I found it, thank you. I have a number of items, just a few that I'd like to highlight. The first is regarding the annual general meeting of the Niagara Land Trust, which was held on the 22nd of January. Certainly would appreciated being there to bring greetings on your behalf and behalf of the entire community. But I wanted to note that the Niagara Land Trust is interested in discussing the potential of preserving some environmentally sensitive lands in the town, and I think they're pointing currently to the East Fawn Hill development area. So I indicated that we would, the CAO and I could meet with them, and we'll bring up to speed on that there might be some potential there that the Land Trust can preserve some lands in that area that's environmentally sensitive. So that will be for council's consideration in the future. Council may recall that we did receive a presentation several years ago from Mr. Wayne Redikoff in the Fort Erie area, who's involved with the Land Trust, and they spoke about that, preserving the environment and lands environmentally in perpetuity. So they do great work. The next is regarding the Pelham Probus Club. I had the pleasure and honor of attending their inaugural meeting and being their inaugural speaker. That occurred on the 23rd of January. And very, very good club, 65 members of this inaugural club, which is absolutely outstanding. And the Probus Club, for those that don't know, is a social club, and it's for retired or semi-retired professionals. So congratulations to members of the Probus Club. We look forward to hearing more about you, and certainly continue to be active. One of the things I did speak to the executive with, and I'm turning to Councillor Kersey because it was your idea at some of the strategic planning that we did at the beginning of the term, was we have so many professionals in our community who may volunteer to be involved in different elements of the community, and I stated that perhaps that's something that we can chat with them about as they get further established. The next item is the Niagara Health System meeting. The CAO, as is outlined in the report, the CAO and I met with Dr. Bushi, met with Dr. Barry Wright, the chair of the board, and Dr. Kevin Smith, the new CEO, to update them on the progress of our medical facility in the East Fawn Hill development area. Drs. Wright and Smith agreed that the development and the location of Pelham can be included in the recently announced planning grant work for the new Southern Hospital and the 2 new UCC-type facilities. So we see this as good news, that they will include all the information that we have in their planning grant moving forward. So it's good news for the community. And that's the process that they'll be following, is to put everything into that planning grant and determine locations and services provided. The final is sort of something that's coming up. And this council may recall back in July 2013, Town Council received a presentation from members of the Mayor's Youth Advisory Council who are working on something called Pink Shirt Day, which is an anti-bullying campaign. That's coming up very quickly now on February 26th. And in addition to encouraging schools to participate, it's the Mayor's Youth Advisory members' hope that the town and staff will wear pink on that day, that pink ribbons can be tied on town vehicles, and that the Font Hill arches can be illuminated pink from just after Valentine's Day until the Pink Shirt Day as a way to promote it. I think it needs to be pinker, Mr. CAO. He's showing off his shirt, but we look forward to that, and the real idea is anti-bullying and promoting that, so we look forward to that. So that's my report, members of council, and it has been moved by Councillor Ribbiak, seconded by Councillor King, that the mayor's report dated January 29th, 2014 be received. Any comments, questions on that? Going to call the question. All those in favor? Any opposed? That motion is carried. Thank you very much. Thank you. The next item is staff reports requiring action. The first is the Enbridge franchise agreement. It has been moved by Councillor Ribbiak, seconded by Councillor King, that the issue sheet report Enbridge franchise agreement be received and that council approve the draft bylaw to allow the town to enter into a franchise agreement with Enbridge Gas, and that the clerk be directed to send a copy of the draft bylaw and council resolution to the Ontario Energy Board for approval. Any discussion regarding this matter? Councillor Papp?
No, I just have to smile. It's as if we didn't sign this, they wouldn't give us natural gas.
Or our money.
Sort of a no-brainer. So what if we said we don't want natural gas?
We'd have problems.
No, I just find that interesting that, because they're using our property and they're paying us to be able to use the pipeline that goes through.
Thank you. Councillor Ribbiak?
I have natural gas.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I have a question, not to be interpreted as criticism at all of the letter or of the arrangement, but really a question for information and maybe it'll lead to some discussion. The question is with regard to the amount that we're being paid. I don't know whether this is a new amount for this contract or whether it has been the same amount for some time. I recognize that the town and Enbridge are kind of in this together and are partners and doing the best that we can for consumers. It seems to me that that utility prices go up, the revenues go up. I don't know that the rent that they pay has gone up. I wonder whether it should, whether that deserves some discussion amongst us as we look at this letter.
Okay. Thank you. Just looking for that. Ms. Pupo, I think you did the work on this. Can you comment on the councillor's concern?
For you,
And,
Mr.
and
Mayor.
is that, where is that and how much is the amount and will it grow?
The amount is calculated by MPAC. It's an assessment on the tax base, so it is not something that we are able to negotiate. It's dictated by the provincial legislation under MPAC. So it does increase with assessment increases. If you see the pipeline, I don't have it in front of me, but the pipeline is separate line on the growth assessment report that I provided to council on the budget binder. So we'll say that there's a phase-in value and it does increase on a 4-year average, and I do believe the pipelines went up a little bit for the revaluation for the 2014 year.
Thank you. Councillor, does that help?
It helps a little. It's good to know that it's tied to an objective standard, but I'm not clear. Is that then Enbridge paying their taxes, or is that an additional rate above and beyond their taxes, and the amount is negotiated based on the impact valuation?
Ms. Pupo?
The amount is considered a payment in lieu, and it's paid through the tax base. We collect it just like we would regular taxes.
Does that help, Councillor?
It does. It increases our understanding.
I guess the interesting thing, and for information, if I'm reading this right, 8.2 in the budget for those that have it, the pipeline is going up, the value of pipeline land is going up 2.3%, although the overall tax assessment for tax purposes is going up 3.4%. So maybe, I know a few years ago, and I sit on the Region's Property Assessment Taxation Review Committee, which deliberates about the rate that's charged. A few years ago, we actually increased the rate for pipelines, and maybe that's something that we can consider this time around too. Does that help, Councillor?
It does. I think at some point we may want to discuss how that cost. I I realize it's revenue, but that revenue offsets the cost to the town. The users of gas are paying a utility bill that presumably goes into the payment of that. It may be worth at some point getting into the ins and outs. I don't think it's for today, but at some point, I think it's worth understanding that more completely.
Okay, thank you. Anything else? Okay, I'm going to call the question. All those in favor? Any opposed? That motion is carried. And we'll look forward to that. And I will discuss it at the regional committee, which sets the rates between different classes. So thank you very much for that. The next item has been moved by Councillor King, seconded by Councillor Papp, that the issue summary report, Pelham Fire Station number 3, be received and the council approve the budget of $1,200,000 for the construction of Fire Station number 3 in North Pelham, and that the overage of $100,000 be funded by the Fire Services Reserve. Any discussion regarding this issue? Councillor Ribbiak?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I guess I've gotten used to staff doing such an excellent job of creating budgets that usually don't produce results in terms of tendering that are above budget. This one is by $100,000. I wonder whether we could get some greater explanation as to why that overage over the budget, where it comes from, and why it's justified, that sort of thing.
Okay, thank you. Chief?
You, Mr. Mayor. If I could start at the beginning with the Zligman report. When they put the report together for the needs analysis and the business plan, they came to us and they gave us a report. Fortunately, it was somewhat vague, and there was quite a few deficiencies or things in it that weren't really pointed out. Starting out with they had speculated that or suggested that we build a 7,500 square foot building. When we started, and his total price was under $1 million to build this building. So we started doing the math on that. We reduced the footprint to 7,000 square feet to try to get, because we knew that these numbers, as we started to calculate these numbers, they weren't going to come together. He suggested in the report that a steel building would be cheaper than a wood building. We've had it quoted out now, and the steel building is $60,000 more. A few other things it wasn't mentioned in the report, but this building has to be post-disaster building. It has to be it's a commercial building, so it has to have a commercial kitchen. And when you have a commercial kitchen, you have to have a suppression system installed in it. That wasn't in the report, so these things kind of all add up. Utilities, we didn't know where the land was going to be, where the building was going to be built. So the current piece that we purchased, the hydro is 1,100 feet south, and the Enbridge is 850 feet. So those utilities have to be brought to the property. And we don't know exactly how that's going to cost out, but we're working on that. He suggested in the report that we have a 30,000 gallon cistern in the ground for washing trucks, cleaning our whatever, and for firefighting needs. First, if you put a dry hydrant cistern in the ground, it's dirty water, so you can't use it for washing trucks. You can't, so it can't use it as he suggests. Where we thought we could go save some money is, instead of, we've costed this out and it's $52,000 for this cistern, is that if we could save that, we could do a pond. So if we could dig a nice big pond out the back and have our connections to that, we would meet those needs, and it would be quite a bit of savings. Well, last summer the underwriters, insurance underwriters, met with myself, and in order for us, right now the town of Pelham, the fire department has a superior tanker accreditation. That means we can supply X number of gallons of water over a period of time in a certain distance, and they give us a special insurance rating on that. So the residents of North Pelham have a certain rating. If I can't meet that accreditation, their rating drops, and their insurance rate could go up as much as 60%. So they said, and they've changed. So in 2014, I can no longer use ponds, creeks, rivers, and that type of thing for water supply. I have to have an actual in-ground dry hydrant system. So now they're forcing me back to build this. So we weren't planning on using or spending $52,000 on this thing. I would have liked to have done a pond, but they're not allowing us to do that. So we could forego the cistern, go to the pond, and meet the fire suppression needs, but it won't meet the insurance needs, and then we're going to have some problems with our residents. So There's a few other things that we've come across, but we're working really quite diligent on this, and when we built Station 2, it cost us over $250 a square foot to build it. Right now, we're sitting at $157 on this building, which is considerably cheaper. And it's unfortunate that we've come back to the table and asked for this, but we can only trim this so much. So the cistern's the biggest chunk of that.
Okay. Thank you, Councilor.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and I have no doubt that all the items that have gone into the cost are necessary. What surprises me is that we didn't know those items at a time when we were estimating a budget so that we could have budgeted for it. I'm kind of wondering why that material wasn't in the original tender, or wasn't in the original estimate for costs, and therefore wouldn't have required a discussion about an increase in the budget. Not arguing about the necessity of those things, and that's great. I'm really talking about the process. Is it just a matter of timing that we got to the budgeting before we got to understanding the project?
Yes, to you, Mr. Mayor. The report was done in 2012. We put the business plan forth in 13, and the budget was approved in 13, but the tender is coming forth in 14. So we're kind of a year and a half behind the schedule from the time we started to look at this whole report.
The CEO wants to add to that. Thank you, Chief. CEO.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just to build on the Chief's comments, so the other thing to keep in mind is that this is a bit of a different approach to building for the town. Normally, you would have your design done and have your costing done, and then you would budget. This project, as you're aware, is a design build, so full construction costs weren't known until the design was done, which we've just completed. And as the Chief said, this was budgeted quite some time ago. So these are costs that have come out. Things like accessibility requirements in the washrooms that our building departments, made us aware. There's changes in the code that have happened. So there's a number of variables, and they weren't nailed down until the design was done. The design is done. Now we'd like to move forward with the construction. I should also indicate that I thank the councillor for bringing your concerns forward and your questions forward. The report, at my request, was put on the agenda as quickly as we could get it on because of the timeline surrounding the project, and we may have missed tying some loose ends together. So I certainly take responsibility for that. But I appreciate the Chief's comments and Council's consideration on the additional budget requirements.
Thank you. Councillor, anything further?
Only a comment. I guess I'm glad that the reserves are there. I'm hoping that the use of those reserves for this project isn't going to leave us at any risk for other items down the road.
Okay. Thank you, Councillor. Other councillors? Perhaps Councillor Pop.
Well, on the same lines as Councillor Ribbiak, and I do understand, I've been through construction projects and things do change. I think part of it, though, I guess, just a little surprised that we knew we needed office equipment, we knew we needed all this stuff, and usually the construction of a facility is just straight construction. It doesn't really deal with all the other amenities. So in the meantime, I'm also, just a question, and I'll leave that to staff, is that hooking up with the utilities can be pretty expensive from what you're telling me, and you've got, what, 1,100 feet to have Hydro One put in a line, or whatever they require, the power? You feel comfortable? What I'm trying to lead towards is that you maybe, I don't know, maybe increase the contingency. I've just got a feeling it's not gonna end up that way, but you guys know what, you know what you're hearing.
Chief?
Through Mr. Mayor, we've been working with the utility companies. The Hydro One would have to put 3 poles in and bring it to the corner of the property. Right. The contractor that we're working with has indicated that they are gonna cover the cost from the pole into the building. So from the property line in, they're gonna do that. They haven't, no one's really committed to us on how they're gonna do this or when they're gonna do this. Enbridge, don't quote me on this, but the talks I've had with Enbridge and when we work with them, it looks like they're gonna do this for us. So, like, just if we back up as far as Enbridge, you're talking about pipeline, Enbridge has donated $20,000 to us in the last 2 years. for the fire department. So they support us very well.
That's good to hear.
Yeah, it's very good.
I don't really anticipate not incurring a huge.
Okay, thank you, Chief. Counselor?
And if we move on this one, anticipate construction soon
Mr. Chief?
on Mr. CO?
We actually have a drawing in front of you.
Yeah.
And this is the floor plan that the committee has agreed to. The changes have made since our last meeting. We're meeting next Tuesday, Wednesday. We're meeting Wednesday. We're probably going to be ready to go. We're just going to wait for the weather.
Right, so next 30, 60 days, you anticipate construction. Okay.
Okay, thank
How
you.
long do you anticipate the construction to be?
We have indicated we're looking around the 6-7 month range. We really put the pressure on them. We really like to see something happen in September. We've told them that October is the actual deadline. We have to have it by October. All of us have really stressed that, and so far all indications that they've really worked well with us. So I think they're going to accommodate us.
Okay,
Good, thanks.
thank you very much, Chief. Counselor Lane?
Just, if I might, Mr. Mayor, as a follow-up, through you to the chief, you mentioned 3 poles for hydro. Has it been considered to go underground as there a price comparison to bury the electricity underground?
Mr. Mayor, actually, the last pole on Cream and 16, the one neighbor across the road, they did put it under the ground to his property. They might just elect to do that, but there's already poles on that street, and they just might continue the poles down that street. So it would be up to their infrastructure how they decide how they're going to do it. I mean, if it's something that we can always suggest it to them. But I would think that they want to continue the pole. There's already poles on the streets. They probably will just continue the poles down.
Thank you. Counselor, anything further?
No, that's fine.
Okay, thank you, Counselor. Counselor Christie?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, through you. Chief, I had a couple of questions. I noticed that in the washrooms, there's only 1 shower for men and 1 for ladies. Is that going to be sufficient for the fire crew out there?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, absolutely. Yeah, if you look at the overall use for this building, we've designated as a satellite fire station because it's not overly busy. They do about 70 calls a year. They use it once a week for their training. So it's we anticipate the actual 1 shower would be in the toilets and all that would be more than enough. So.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, again through you to the chief. Did I hear you correctly that this is going to be a wood building? Like, is it a board and batten type structure, or?
Mr. Mayor, it's going to be concrete, some block, and wood frame, wood trusses, and some wood walls. They have some, depends where the fire separations and that are, because they have to have a certain construction rate, but yes, it will be. And it'll meet post-disaster code.
So the exterior finishes here, I can see where they marked the masonry, but the siding that's on there, is that steel siding or aluminum or board and batten, or?
We've been looking at 3 different sidings. They've looked at a steel blind siding, doesn't show fasteners, a little less barn-looking type thing. There's the Hardy, like a cementatious board and batten, and then there's a Maybach product, which is a board and batten also. And then the inside of the bays is steel itself.
So I presume, through you, Mr. Mayor, that when you look at these, you're going to also look at the long-term maintenance of each of the items. You know, the maintenance costs can, when you get into wood structure, can be pretty.
It's, we've actually considered, one of the considerations by the committee was the longevity of the building, the performance in the building. We've already addressed a few concerns as far as the inside of the bays where there's a lot of water from washing and all that stuff. We've actually, the contractor is going to be building the interior wall out of poured concrete and then continuing the wall rather than have the wall go right to the floor, so it would protect the walls more. Like we've made some adjustments there, and the steel, it'll have steel on both sides if we go with the steel siding, so the wood will be completely encapsulated.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Chief. Counselor, anything further?
I just have a final comment. When we do a project like this, it would be really helpful if a presentation could be made to council in total about the project and how the steps that have been done and the total design and what the attributes of the design are, as well as any additional funding goes, as opposed to sort of having it appear on our schedule at a sort of a last minute thing. And it's not a comment directed at anybody, it's just a comment for future processes when we do a building. I think it would be really appropriate to have the committee who is in charge of working with the contractor, et cetera, to come in and make a presentation to council so that we're all informed when we get questions from the public, that we can answer them in an intelligent way.
Okay.
Thanks, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you very much, Counselor. I see the CEO has taken that under advisement, and we'll do that. Counselor Durley.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Through you to the chief. But looking at the diagram here, Chief, back in another life, I did some firefighting, and we had to have a hose drying area and all that. Is the new hose that we're using today not requiring this? We just have to hang it and dry it and all that stuff, and I don't see any of that on this diagram.
That's correct, through you, Mr. Mayor. Yes, all the fire hose we have today is all synthetic. You wash it and you put it back in the truck wet.
Perfect. Okay.
Okay, thank you, Chief. Anything else? Certainly appreciate the questions from colleagues around the table. I had many questions about this, and I also appreciate the CEO's comments that wanted to get this on the agenda to keep this moving, and I appreciate the answers that have been provided by the Chief this evening. And finally, I do also appreciate Councillor Kersey's comments, and maybe that's something that can be done in the future, whether it's at council or at another venue, with members of the committee who are actively involved in this and certainly take pride in it, that perhaps can make a presentation and talk a little bit more about it. So thank you very much for that. So without anything further from other members of council, I will call the question that on the motion before us. All those in favor? Any opposed? That motion is carried. Thank you. Madam Clerk, I'm going to ask you to comment. Go ahead.
The next item on the agenda is the permissive grants that was brought forward under unfinished business. The motion being presented is the original motion from the permissive grants that was never dealt with.
Thank you very much. So it has been moved by Councillor Papp, seconded by Councillor Lane, that the issue sheet for agenda permissive grant evaluation results and recommendations be received, and that the recommendation contained therein be approved as follows. The Committee of the Whole recommend
That should just say council,
that council, okay, that
Just go that the following.
that the following permissive grant allocations be considered as part of the 2014 operating budget. Pelham Cares, $17,600. Women's Place, $4,000. United Way of South Niagara, $2,550. Child Advocacy Center, $1,500, for a total of $25,650. And the council waived the fee in 2014 for the use of the town arena for the purpose of holding an art festival to be delivered by the Pelham Art Festival. Discussion to this item, and I know that councillors had some information. I believe it's before us, including the evaluation criteria and all those things. Councillor Ribbiak.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and I think it was at my suggestion that this be put off, and I appreciate that council did that. Mr. Mayor, I have a couple of amendments that I would like to make to the motion. I don't know whether they can be handled as one or two. I'll let our clerk determine. But the two amendments are, first, that the amount designated within the permissive grant be reallocated such that the Lions Club application for $8,000 for a sign be accepted, and that the allocation provided to Pelham Cares within the motion be reduced by $8,000.
Okay.
So that's the first of the changes that I would like to make.
Okay.
And the second, if I may, and we can
Go
decide
ahead.
whether it's part of the same motion or not to the clerk. The other suggestion I have is that the permissive grant process be examined by staff, and perhaps before the next budget cycle, we'll have an opportunity to see a process that has been amended to better reflect the wishes of council in making permissive grants. And I'll be happy to speak to both of those if I have a second here, if we can.
Okay, I think we should take them, there's two distinct thoughts.
Okay.
So I think we should take them separately. And so the first one is the, regarding the reallocation of the permissive grant portion. 8,000 for the Lions for the sign, and the reduction of Pelham Cares by the same amount. Is there a seconder for that? And that's seconded by Councillor King. And now discussion to that. Anything to add, the mover seconder?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. The reason I make that motion is I can recall that some months ago, I think it was early part of last summer, the Lions Club made a presentation and a request with regard to that $8,000, and at that time in our discussion, we suggested that they make their application to the permissive grant process for consideration. I don't think, Mr. Mayor, that we made that suggestion as a way of putting off the application. I think we genuinely believe that there would be consideration for that application within that process. So it was a bit of a surprise to me, perhaps to others of our colleagues, that in fact that amount had not been accepted. In our discussion as to why the one amount, that amount wasn't there, we had a discussion about the issue of capital projects. I had asked whether the reason that the Lions application had been turned down was because it was for a capital project. There was an indication that it was. In the presentation of the material, the information that has been provided by staff with regard to this, I note that in fact the question of capital projects doesn't come up in the evaluation process at all. It's neither there as an eligibility criterion, nor is it scored anywhere with regard to the value of one project over another. And indeed, when reading the application from Pelham Cares, they quite properly, quite justifiably are discussing their plans for a capital project. There's no doubt in my mind in reading their application that in fact their view is that the receipt of this money would be for all their projects, including capital, whereas of course the Lions Club application was strictly for capital. But both organizations do good work in this town. Both have a long history. They support one another. I know that Fonthill Lions do a lot of work in their efforts in support of Pelham Cares. I'm not sure, Mr. Mayor, whether in our view, if an organization doing good work feels that the most effective and efficient way of doing that work is by investing in a capital project, I don't think it matters to us if that's the route that they choose. If they're going to be using the funds that we provide for the good purposes that they declare and that we intend, I think it's still a good project and one worth funding. So I think that that's the reason I think that I want that amendment done. I think we wanted it, and I think the Lions Club is as much worthy of consideration in the permissive grant system as Pelham Cares is certainly in this go around. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you very much, Councillor. Councillor King?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I think that Pelham Cares has been a recipient of a permissive grant for a number of years now. And I think that at initial application for a permissive grant, times were different for them in terms of support, in terms of the services that they were providing. And if it were not for the Lions Club, we would see a reduction in the amount of services that are being provided for many of our events. And I think it's time to make a shift and recognize the good work that the Lions do within the community for us.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor. Others to the amendment? Councillor Lane?
Yes, if I might. On the surface, the issue that I have is not necessarily the issue that's raised, but of what is going to be the configuration and what have you, of the sign that would be installed in this particular location. Being a gateway into Pelham, and that, quite frankly, I'm having an issue with the signs that already appear along 20 Highway, and to add other signs to there that are going to look the same, I'm not sure is conducive to what we're trying to or what we want to do in that end of town. So if that's the kind of sign that is being proposed, then frankly, I'm not sure it fits.
Okay.
And for that reason, I'm not leaning towards this. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much, Counselor. I don't know if we don't have it before us. Do we have a description of that sign and what that would look like? My understanding is that it's a changeable electronic sign. Ms. Van Ravensway, can you fill us in, or Madam Treasurer, do you have the application handy?
Through you, Mr. Mayor. It will be a electronic sign. I know that the actual design, I seen it a while ago. I cannot recall, but I'm sure that we can get a copy of it and forward it to council.
Okay, thank you. Councilor Ribbiak, you have something to add to that element?
I do. My sense is that we may have an opportunity to look at their application for a sign under the sign bylaw. I'm not sure whether what they're proposing would require that or not, but if they do, obviously at that point we can provide advice as required.
Okay, thank you. Thank you. Anything further, Councilor Lane? Then I'll move to Councilor Kersey. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I will be supporting this motion. In fact, I had it in my mind to propose something a little bit more draconian with respect to Pelham Cares, and it's not a comment on the work that they do, because we all know that they do good work. But when I see an organization that's spending something in the order of 20% of their budget on services and the balance on occupancy costs and staffing and what have you, and finish the year with a significant surplus, and have done so in a number of previous years. Quite frankly, Mr. Mayor, my motion would have been to remove them entirely from the permissive grant schedule, and to either not spend that money or to reallocate it. And I would be willing to make that motion, an amendment to the motion that's on the floor, that the allocation to Pelham Cares be reduced to zero, and that I would continue with the same thought process, that the Pelham Lions would be supported to the level of $8,000.
Okay, so an amendment to amendment is allowed, but no further amendments, is that correct? Okay, so secondary amendments are allowed, but not tertiary, as the clerk has stated, so 3 amendments on a main motion. And your amendment to Councillor Ribbiak's amendment is that Councillor Ribbiak stated that the Pelham Cares allocation be reduced in that amount, so I believe that's $9,600. Your amendment to that is that it be reduced to 0.
Yes.
Okay. Is there a seconder for that amendment? There's no seconder for your amendment, Councillor. Okay. So now we are back to the amendment that Councillor Ribbiak suggested. Are there any other speakers to that amendment? Councillor Papp, did you want to speak?
No, I guess the whole theme and thrust of us permissive grants is to help organizations help deliver those services. And being someone that's worked in a nonprofit, it's difficult for all of them. There's not a single one here. But I understand where Councillor Kersey's coming from, but at the same token, I also understand the work that the other organizations do. So gradually, maybe at some point, we may be at a point that other municipalities have faced, we haven't done that, is we cancel all permissive grants. And trust me, I've been there and watched them do that to organizations where they have to then scramble around and find the money to carry on, whether it's operational net. So I think this is fair. I think what you're going to talk about next is important too, is that we again re-examine this whole community permissive grant system. So, and in all fairness to Pelham Cares too, is if this is approved, then gradually at some point that whole justification will have to come back. But notwithstanding that, I think we need to the Lions were fair enough to come forward to us, and I think I'm comfortable with it. And as long as it's compatible with what we're trying to do out there and trying to design out there, I have no problem with it.
Okay, thank you very much. Any other members of council? I'd just like to comment, I am supportive as well to the amendment that Councillor Rubiak and Councillor King have put forward. When I think about, and some of this has been touched on by councillors, but when I think about the work of the Fawn Hill Lions Club, they've been doing it for many, many years, and certainly have been assisting Pelham Cares. The food drive, for instance, is and has been running for a couple of decades or more out of that facility, and that food drive directly helps the clients of Pelham Cares. My understanding from the application, as I recall it, we don't have it in front of us, is that not only will this be an investment in a gateway sign, as has been talked about, but also there's the opportunity for the town to include many of the events that the town holds dear, whether it's Summerfest or whether it's the band shell concert series, etc. Many of those events, members of the Lions Club, as was pointed out, are active volunteers and participants in Canada Day as well. Very, very active in the community and a huge part. So I see this more as a recognition of the many, many years of dedication, the many years of commitment from the Fawn Hill Lions to promote their events and also the town's events, of which they are a significant part. So I am supportive as well. And I'm going, Councillor Durley.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I just want to get a word in here since everyone else has. The Lions certainly help us out in the recreation provision of the slow pitch diamonds and all that good stuff too. So a sign such as this not only will help, as you were pointing out, but it will enhance the services that the Lions can do at their location there as well. So I see this as a positive thing. Being in a gateway, I'm sure that they would have no problems making sure that the appearance of that is going to complement, and I think I have to support this as well because the whole nature of it, and it's not, in my opinion, it's not just a sign, it's actually an enhancement of the whole services that the Lions do provide for us, and this is where I come from. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much, Councillor. Any others? Are we ready for the question, calling the question on the amendment? All those in favor? Any opposed? None. That amendment is carried. And Councillor Ribiak, you signaled that you may have another amendment. Go ahead, sir.
Sure, Mr. Mayor. In reviewing the information that was provided with regard to this issue, obviously we had the opportunity to look at the evaluation sheets, and if anything is going to reflect what we're trying to accomplish, it would be those evaluation sheets. Seeing that those evaluation sheets are lacking, and we can describe that again if there's a seconder to the motion, I would propose that we add as an amendment to the motion that's on the table that we have an opportunity sometime before the next budget cycle, the opportunity to put input into an evaluation process for permissive grants that will reflect what it is we're trying to accomplish.
Okay, so that the issue of permissive grants come back to council?
But the process.
The process of permissive.
Process.
Okay. For consideration, for discussion and consideration? Okay. Is there a seconder for that? Councillor Papp, you'd signaled that, did you want to have that discussion about the permissive
I'm
grants?
sorry, I was looking, actually, let's take another look at it. I did provide some information a while back, 2 or 3 years ago. And I'm prepared to do that again, and there are some best practices that maybe will help Councillor Ribiak, and then next council comes in, and if they wish to change it, let's take a look at it, because this is, every year we go through this. And let's put it to bed once and for all, right? And I have that information. I was just looking for it, and I'll send it to Mr. CAO and Madam Treasurer. I got some more additional information that'll help us with exactly this issue, of how this protocol is unfolded, if you're good with that.
Okay. Thank you. So that
Thank
is
you.
seconded. Any other speakers to the motion? Councillor Durley.
Actually, I would like to perhaps defer this matter until such time as all this comes in. I see it as the the first part of the First Amendment deals with what we are actually going to be giving now, and the second is a new policy for the future. So I think this probably should be divided in the fact that they are separate issues altogether. So I think we should deal with them separately. We have the First Amendment, which is going to deal with the permissive grants as they now sit. On a go-forward basis, we'll deal with Councillor Ribbiak's suggestion, and I think the best way to do it is to get the information, as Councillor Papp has indicated, and with the help of staff, we can get together and put together a terrific policy and do what we do have to do on a go-forward basis.
Okay, thank you. Madam Clerk, in terms of process, we do have an amendment on the floor, do we not?
Do we defeat it?
We do have an amendment on the floor to refer the process back to staff, and let me see, to have an opportunity prior to the next budget cycle to have input into the evaluation process of permissive grants that is reflective of council's vision.
So Counselor, I would suggest to you that if we accept the amendment now and it gets added to the amended motion, it will achieve what you've described. That's my understanding. I could be wrong, but as the clerk has described it, it would achieve that. It would come back to us not this evening, but much later, but before the budget cycle.
Yeah, I don't have a problem with that. Definitely, we shouldn't be dealing with it tonight because I don't think we're prepared to deal with it tonight, and it is something that is for the future, so I agree with you, and if that amendment does accomplish that, I will support it.
Okay, I think it does, as Madam Clerk, that's what's being accomplished, right?
That's what I understand.
Okay, thank you. So are we ready for the amendment? All those in favor? Any opposed? That amendment is carried. And now to the main motion as amended, unless there's a third amendment. Councillor Kersey?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Are we entitled to ask questions of our treasurer regarding the evaluation, or the CAO regarding the evaluation? I had some questions about some other areas.
Is it regarding specifically to an application or
Yes,
one of the
yes, it is.
applicants?
Yes, it is.
I guess it would be in order.
I'll make it as brief as I can. I have a couple of concerns regarding a couple of other agencies, not with respect to the work that they do, but with the need that has been expressed. One of them is Women's Place. And I guess I would like my concerns allayed a little bit. Is there, after you've examined the financial reports from that organization, is there indeed a financial need that's been expressed and demonstrated by that organization? And B, have we looked at the statistics of that organization to determine what percentage of our population, that being Pelham, is actually being serviced? Because permissive grants are really to be directed at organizations that predominantly provide service to Pelham. You know, and just as a comparative, we turned down a permissive grant to the Historical Museum in Welland, for example, part of the grounds being that they don't specifically provide a service to Pelham. So if you could address those two particular questions, Mr. Mayor.
Okay.
Through you.
Madam Treasurer, are you able to answer those at the moment?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, I think I recall the Women's Place. I don't have the financials in front of me. One of the things that you may recall is in October we did bring an update of the policy to council before this budget process to have it kind of looked at, the process looked at that time. There is at the base of that that there is completely ineligible would be capital projects, and that's, you know, we're not trying to preclude anybody, we're just trying to.
Can you please address the councillor's question about?
And well, with respect to that, one of the things that we changed was, you know, let us know who you're serving in Pelham, and we had not received that information in the past, so we made sure that they documented all of the people that they received, that they were taking care of in Pelham. And Pelham is our Women's Place is the only source, or the main source for these women that are in Pelham that are in need, that attend that. So we did count that as something that was in need.
Thank you.
As a follow-up, Mr. Mayor, but given that the Women's Place does do fundraising within Pelham as well to raise funds, and the community at large gives to that organization to support their work that they do here. So I guess the question I'm asking is, given the number of services that they provide to our population and the dollars that are, do they have a financial need given the money that they raise in Pelham versus the number of services that they provide to Pelham.
The application, especially states that they have a financial need. They have the financial statements, which I could share with all of council, like we shared the Pelham Cares ones, and you can use those. But they will explain what the source of their funding is, what they use it for, and exactly why they need the $4,000 in the application. So, there is a need determined through the evaluation process that the $4,000 is something that they need to meet all the requirements for funding in the year. But again, I can provide any details to council.
Okay, thank you.
I guess as a simple follow-up then, Mr. Mayor, do they finish the year with a surplus or a deficit, or do they have money in the bank?
It sounds like the treasurer doesn't have that information right now, and I know that it was at a previous, we had some of that at a previous meeting.
Right.
So I would ask that, that maybe that be circulated. It doesn't appear, Councillor, that, I don't know if it'll change your vote on this or not, but, so I'm not trying to cut off debate. I'm just saying it doesn't appear that we have the answer to those questions at our fingertips. So is there anything further on the motion as amended, or are we ready for the calling of the question? Just Councillor Papp?
I just want to assure my colleague, and I'm no longer in let's say, a position of conflict before as I worked for another funding organization, but I can assure you that I am familiar with the data that was presented to us in the past to our funding organization, and Women's Place does have, does deliver service and programs to people here locally. A lot of it is confidential, but they do things that are there. So is there value? I would cautious to say yes, there is, but it doesn't hurt for us to look at their overall picture, because they are a very large organization. So, for a nonprofit, they don't produce a profit. They put the money back into reserves for future. So I want to rest assured that that's the case. But there's other cases, like you've said, where there's nonprofits that do extremely well and others that are struggling. And the question is if that value is coming to us, and I think I can assure you that it is.
Okay, thank you very much,
Thanks,
Councillor
Mr. Mayor,
Papp.
for that
Appreciate
latitude, because I just, I have that knowledge base, so I can
Yes.
give you some idea of what's going on, of
Okay.
what's happening, okay?
Thank you very much. Any others? Are we ready for the calling of a question? All those in favor? Any opposed? That motion is carried as amended unanimously. Thank you very much. The next item has been moved by Councillor King, seconded by Councillor Ribbiak, or sorry, Councillor Durley, apologies, that Council of the Town of Pelham having, we're in the right spot? Oh, I'm sorry. We do have the East Fond Hill Development Branding Marketing Contest. Councillor Papp, I apologize. So you added this to the agenda?
No
Go ahead.
problem, Mr. Mayor. From time to time, I do have signs of genius and creativity, and some people will argue that doesn't happen.
Absolutely, it happens.
But in discussing with my colleagues and many of you, and I thought, and the mayor, we thought that it would be something that I think all of our community could have a chance, because what we're building down there, and will be the same case but this is a historic development down the street here, and what I'm suggesting is the branding and the marketing and using the incredible technique and expertise of Anna that we would put together, not before you leave, you got to, is basically a contest that would be open to businesses, to the schools, of what we would want to name that development down Highway 20. And I'd leave it wide open, and there's been some suggestions by both our development group and ourselves, but I think it wouldn't be kind of particularly creative and if we asked our young people, because they're the ones that will inherit this legacy as years go on, and we want to make sure. So I'm going to propose some prerequisites, and I'll send them on to staff and how we would structure this. And it's been done in other communities, so, and I want to leave it as, how can I say, flexible as possible, and I'll send it on to the CAO to let them play around with this. But basically, we're talking about a gateway, so what do you want it to be called? What do we want to refer to it as? And I think you and I have had discussions with other, how can I say, key people in the development business think it's ingenious that you should do something like this and be able to say it. So that's what I'm proposing, if council is good with that, and it would allow for something a little different, creative, a little bit more, how can I say, the ability to say what is it as part of our marketing and branding. So I've got a couple of other municipal sites that have actually done this, and I'll forward this on to the CAO and see if we can package something together here in the next month or so, if that's okay with members of council.
Thank you very much, Councillor Papp, for raising it. Certainly, we've been referring to that entire area as East Font Hill or the East Font Hill Secondary Plan area, which isn't very descriptive. I mean, it's descriptive, but it's not sort of in keeping with what you're describing as a gateway and those kind of things. And I know that some members of council have been thinking about this. So I'm just going to turn to the CAO in terms of, I presume this is staff direction to come back with some sort of description of what this program could look like, and we want Councillor Papp's information. And then would this come back to council, Mr. CAO, just for kind of a final approval piece, Mr. CAO?
Yes, Mr. Mayor, I'd be interested to see what the council could provide, and we'd certainly look at it and come back with a proposal or recommendation. I thought that the area was already named, though. I thought it was being called King's Corner. I'm confused. So.
King's Corner. What the heck?
Very good.
How much wine did I have that night? I remember that.
So with council's approval, it will be, Councillor Papp will provide information to staff. Staff will come forward with kind of an outline of what this would look like and the parameters, and then we can get it out to the community on that. Okay, anything further on that? Councillor Lane?
As with any contest, we obviously will be a prize or something, right? Should have to be determined.
Councillor Papp, any thought to that?
I can have my seat. No.
Right.
It's supposed to be a reward.
If it's divided, my initial thoughts when I saw this is that's a good point, Councillor. And there would be I'm thinking of 2 or 3 prizes for children, from the youth and kids, and if there is something for the business community in Pelham, let me work on that. There's a couple of suggestions on how this could be structured.
All right.
Or they pay the tab at the trap. I don't know.
Thank you,
no
Councillor.
idea. I have no, but yeah,
we
I
look
think there has
forward. We
to be
look
some
forward to that,
incentive.
and certainly if council colleagues have suggestions for Councillor Papp and the staff on prizes, or those from the community for a prize, perhaps you can do that offline. Councillor Durley, quickly.
Okay, offline, perhaps a suggestion could be to name a street after the winner.
Very good. Excellent. There we are.
Councillor Durley. So we look forward to that coming back at either the next meeting or the meeting after that with that concept. Are we ready for the next item, which is bylaws? It's been moved by Councillor King, seconded by Councillor Durley. The Council of the Town of Pelham, having given due consideration to the following bylaws, do now read first, second, and third time and do pass the same, and the Mayor Clerk are hereby authorized to sign and seal the bylaws. There are 4. The first is bylaw 3462, being a bylaw to authorize the Mayor Clerk to enter into a service contract agreement with the Harrington Group Limited as per their proposal to coordinate Ontarians with Disability Act compliance for the period of February 1st, 2014 to January 31st, 2015. Bylaw 3463 being a bylaw to provide for the interim tax levy for the year 2014. The third bylaw, 3464, being a bylaw to appoint Karen Vermeer and P.J. Berg to the Town of Pelham Communities and Bloom Committee. And bylaw 3465 being a bylaw to appoint a drainage superintendent and to repeal and replace bylaw 3447, 2013. Any questions? All those in favor? Any opposed? That motion is carried. We do have an in-camera, 2 in-camera items. So, as per our custom, it has been moved by Councillor King, seconded by Councillor Durley. Council recess the in-camera portion of the meeting and reconvene immediately following committee meeting scheduled for this evening. All those in favor? Any opposed? That motion is carried. We'll now take a brief recess. Thank you.
There's the one of this in bronze and corporate cabbage.